back to Football Daily Weekly. It's lovely to have you guys for the final show of the year, right?
Yes.
Final Football Daily Weekly of the year.
It's certainly in
the last
coming
bits.
To the end. Yeah.
And in many ways, it's come to the end for you because.
Really?
Yes.
So why am I finding out now?
Yeah, because that's what management said. All right.
All right. Yeah.
Patrick's moving on.
Yeah, I am. Yeah, and so let's make this one a humdinger.
Yeah. And that's why we brought in many ways, a better Patrick.
I like to think so.
Yeah,
I'm here to provide a seamless Patrick handover.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. I think I saw a video about that one. Anyway, we're doing 5 things we learned this weekend, and there are some great things that we learned. Should we just get straight into it?
Let's kick it off, mate.
Guardiola has... Why'd you get good now? Guardiola has finally made his Bayern Munich future clear. Yes. And thank God he announced it at the Christmas party.
He did. Well, no, I think that's how they did it.
I've got some news.
I think there's literally...
I just wanted to tell you all, you know, Auf Wiedersehen.
Isn't
and then
that
he just
almost
threw the mic.
literally what happened in Cobham with Chelsea?
Yeah, exactly.
Right, you've had your lunch now.
Yeah. That wasn't it.
I think it was in a cracker, right?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, or something, yeah.
Yeah. You're not fired. You're not fired. Make sure this one gets to him. So he's finally going.
Yes.
And where he's going, we don't know yet.
Well, like you were saying, I mean, it sort of felt like maybe a marriage of convenience. I think most interestingly, I think it adds a lot of spice to the Champions League this year because he's won 2. He's won 2 titles and a cup in Germany.
Yeah.
So I think he will, considering what they did just before the May, just before he arrived. He'll be seen as a failure, no, if he doesn't win the Champions League. Not a failure, but an underachievement.
Well, I think it'll be an underachievement. People say it's an underachievement for him, and possibly partly for the club. You can also put down the dominance of Barcelona at this time, partly down to that, can't you?
Yeah.
But also, I mean, we say it's a marriage of convenience because he was essentially brought in to change up a few things at the club, wasn't he, Patrick?
Yeah, he was. I mean, I think they thought that he'd kind of take them into the new age, and then they got it. Lucky, unlucky with Heinkes winning the treble.
Yeah.
Terrible luck.
Yeah, exactly. It's awful.
Shit.
How Guardiola's seen, I think, kind of depends how Ancelotti does afterwards. If he goes in and wins the Champions League in the following season, then maybe they'll think he did underachieve.
Really? Do you not? Do you think? I mean, it's very similar to what happened at Barcelona, isn't it? That the people benefited from his initial groundwork, essentially. So, and Ancelotti is very much one of those managers that keeps the momentum going.
That's right. I think it's a really interesting point. I think that winning the treble in 2013, it was almost kind of like, it was their kind of Fonda Siècle moment. Where do we go from here?
Yeah.
It's the only way is down. So he was the only one, the name big enough to provide that sustained excellence, I suppose.
Yes. And to, in many ways, enhance that excellence, because they weren't lost as a club, but they certainly felt like the football was good under Heinkes, and it was definitely better than what they had under Van Gaal. But he took it a step further, and essentially has made players feel free and happy and loved.
Question is now, where's he going now?
It looks like it's England, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It sounds like it's
clubs. Like, I mean, so we could go through. I mean, Manchester City feels like the sort of the flat pack project for him, doesn't it? I mean,
that's such a good way of describing it.
But now Roman Abramovich is the one who will literally take him out on date after date after date, and will throw money at. He's the one who I think passionately wants him there.
But I think Man United could be an interesting fit for Guardiola. Well, you kind of think they've got young, exciting players there, and he likes versatility in his players. Look what he's done with Alaba. Look at, well, Douglas Costa isn't that young, but he likes these guys who can play a variety of roles. Whereas you look at City, and the one place they don't really have depth is fullback. And I sort of think of Guardiola as a guy who ideally would play 11 fullbacks.
2 defenders.
Do you think they've just been stalling buying new fullbacks for years in the hope that Pep Guardiola will get there in the end? They're just going,
hang on, whoa. We'll see how this plays out.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Although then why are you paying Sanya so much? Yeah, fantastic. Brilliant, well done. And secondly, Van Gaal has always preceded Guardiola.
Yes, I know. It's a fantastic segue into our second point.
Yeah, so point 2, Van Gaal's not secure in his job.
Well, I thought it was an extraordinary kind of capitulation for an interview, into to say that I'm worried about my job, it's not been good enough, and I expect the worst. And I don't think Manchester United are in that position. I think Manchester United are legitimately still, technically in a title race. You know what I mean?
But they'll finish in the Champions League.
Yeah. So I mean, it's.
Do you think they will finish?
I don't think he's going to be there for very long. But I do think it felt a bit premature for him to be what seemed like throwing the towel in.
I'm not here for a long time or a good time, would be what he can say.
He's out of contract at the end of the 2016 to 17 season, so he's not going to be staying beyond that anyway. So wouldn't it be strange if they, unless it was a Guardiola type figure, they would sort of prematurely end that just a year?
I mean, there's just such discontent, isn't there? the fans sound so unhappy with the football they've got.
Well, the one thing he had in his corner was the fact that they defended well and they let him one goal in since the Middle Ages or something.
To be fair,
and then they
felt like the Middle Ages.
Yeah, but then when the defence starts failing for you, it kind of undermines all of your conservative strategy, doesn't it?
Yeah, no, it does.
I feel like they were overachieving though last season and at the beginning of this season.
Why are they overachieving though? They're saying the money they've spent, those kind of things. That's just perspectivizing underachievement.
Well, they've got the players to do better, but he has this system where they bought in Memphis Depay. The great thing about Memphis Depay was that he was shooting like a maniac in the Netherlands. He just shot constantly.
Was that good about him?
In the Netherlands, it is.
Yeah.
But those things kind of like map onto future performance. Cristiano Ronaldo was shooting a lot at a young age, and it shows you're getting in the positions to shoot.
Sure.
But then you bring him in and say, well, you're not allowed to shoot anymore. We just sort of pass it around the back, and maybe Chris Smalling goes on a run. Everyone gets excited in the 55th minute.
He does encourage them. Yeah. He encourages his players to take a touch. Ahead of shooting. So there's not many players now. I mean, he'll have been furious with Rooney for taking that overhead kick. But then, I mean, think about it.
But Rooney's still a big factor, isn't it? Because he's someone the managers obviously put total favour in. He's still the club captain, and he's noticeably declining.
Really?
Yeah.
And it's like, and that's obviously part of their sort of failure as well, isn't it?
Yeah, you sort of feel. Yeah, well,
that could have been unforeseen maybe by.
I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure it was unforeseen by everyone but Ed Woodward. So he completely didn't see that, and everyone else went, probably want to move him on. He's not going to be great soon.
Or did they not think they could adapt into another position, which Manchester United have had a load of other successes in the past with, in working with older players?
Well. Rooney's played all over the place before, and he's been excellent. It's a little bit sad. Yeah, he's been a great kind of poacher striker. He's been a great number 10, a great centre forward. He can vaguely do a job on the wing.
Yeah.
Vaguely. He'll run around a bit, which is more than you can say for some players.
Would you say, though, that there's a problem here that even if almost a problem with professionalism, because people are saying, well, the players are downhearted, those kind of things. There's no morale within the group. You still have to do your job.
Yeah.
Put three, Real Madrid have a new kind of DECIMA. Well done, Patrick. You wrote the script. What do you mean by that?
I meant they scored 10 goals, and it's similar to the amount of European Cups they got.
Oh, good. Yeah.
So 10, 10, 10. What I did notice afterwards, obviously, Football Daily did one of its exemplary Internet Reacts videos.
And you praise your own work?
I noticed that on Twitter, La Liga was immediately trending. And I mean, the word La Liga was because everyone saw this as a watershed moment, that La Liga was a sort of a broken league, a rubbish league, by virtue of the fact that the top could beat the bottom 10-2. And I'm not sure I totally agree
the bottom with 9 men, or 10 men.
Yeah, I think so.
Men.
But that's what I'm saying is that's the reaction was just that, this shows that La Liga is a crap league, and I don't necessarily
now you're seeing that.
No.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It was nonsense. It's always been that way. A season or two ago, Real Madrid beat Sevilla, I think 7-3 at the Bernabeu, and Sevilla are a much better team than Rayo Vallecano.
But now, don't get me wrong. I think the haves and have-nots are far more disparate and greater in the league than they are in the Premier League. I mean, you just have to look at the results this weekend in the Premier League and see the story of Leicester City to see how the effect, the splitting of the TV deal, how practically you can demonstrate itself on the pitch. However,
I think that's actually the ratio at which the money was spread along.
It wouldn't actually be that far.
It's probably a worse ratio.
You do have bonkers scorelines in the Premier League too. Not so long ago, Arsenal beat Manchester United. Manchester United beat Arsenal 8-2.
Yeah.
I've seen a 7-2 at Stamford Bridge. I've seen it was against Sunderland, I think.
Yeah, that was a good
one. Chelsea beat 8-0, another one. But you do get these scorelines in the Premier League as well. I don't think what I was saying was I don't necessarily agree that it shows that La Liga is in a totally different world to the Premier League, even though the haves and have-nots.
I think it shows they're just at different times in the timeline. But Benitez does
have.
I think in the long run, there's going to be a lot of disruption within the Liga as the money begins to even out a little bit. And we've obviously begun to see that in the Premier League this season as people speak about it becoming more competitive. And, there's a lot more nuance to that. But in the short run, I think the Premier League will suffer. And in the long run, I think other leagues may catch up. Right. When I say catch up, I mean in financial terms. I don't necessarily think that everyone's progressing in the right way, but I think that's what most people see as the way forward.
It kind of depends what you want from a league, as to which league you think is the best. So the top level in the Bundesliga or La Liga at the moment is higher than the top level in the Premier League. I think the bottom level in the Premier League is better than the bottom level in La Liga, because these people who say La Liga is the best league in the world should seriously watch Getafe versus Levante. They should be forced to, and then see how they feel about that.
Real Vallecano were down to 10 men. They conceded a lot of the goals after that. And Benitez sides have a little bit of a tendency to kind of go off on people every now and again because his style of football, they love to strangle the other team, which they weren't doing when they were 2-1 down.
They were 2-1
Suddenly
down,
a man gets sent off, and Benitez just knows. Like, he just knows how to really mess another side up. And if he has the personnel to carry that out, which fortunately for him, because he's the Real Madrid manager, he did on the pitch, all of it went well. Gareth Bale got 4 goals. Ronaldo managed to get them back into the game. Essentially he's got a team that can sense blood, and there's almost a sense of relief about the team that they almost don't have to play the Benitez way when they go up. Point number 4 about Chelsea and, those rats. Those filthy, dirty rats.
It was
not Fabregas.
It was miraculous, the reversal of their form, wasn't it? I mean, it's quite clear the Chelsea supporters, outwardly at least, in a unified voice, have blamed the players for what's happened.
Thank God we could make them turn on their own like
and
that.
it was like it was quite clear that they obviously, Jose Mourinho, obviously there was serious problems there. You can go back for the long term issues of a botched transfer policy and a botched sort of summer preparation. The doctor thing was a ridiculous matter of ego. It was a wrong fight to pick. I think there was.
I don't think she had an ego.
I think the Lukaku thing as well. I don't think the club and Mourinho were pulling in the same direction about that.
And Lukaku.
And I think so. There was all these problems mounting for Jose Mourinho, but it was quite clear at the same time the players should be giving 100% as professionals for Chelsea, and they just weren't doing that. And for a personality type like Mourinho, it would send you a bit mad. Who's quite, we were talking earlier, he's probably a bit similar to Ferguson in a slightly Stalinist kind of management approach. If they're not on side with you, or at least they think they're not on side with me, you're out. And so basically, and the players clearly weren't giving 100% for him, or at least some of them were. There were notable exceptions, like you got Ramirez, Willian, who quite frankly should be captain after this season. I think John Terry should do the decent thing. And so John Terry should probably
off. Oh right,
go out to pasture.
But I think.
Are you talking about shooting John Terry in the head?
Well, it's better than him going out to stud.
Yeah,
which is what he's been doing the rest of his career.
But it was incredibly surreal kind of atmosphere at Stamford Bridge.
Yeah.
They were almost booing their own goals and cheering for Jose Mourinho when they scored. They took a lot of pride in their relationship with Jose Mourinho, the Chelsea fans, and they're absolutely right to be hurt. Because clearly on the pitch, their players were not giving 100%. They may have been huge. I'm not a Jose Mourinho purist in that sense, but there were serious problems with his management. So I'm not least tactically, because he sacrificed a lot in terms of players and relationships, and players sold for a system that I don't think he actually worked out for himself. I don't think Ossie ever really worked out. Oscar played with Hazard. Oscar clearly wasn't happy in that role. I mean, he demands an incredible amount of midfield players, Jose Mourinho.
Weirdly, for someone who doesn't like it.
And he was stuck. For someone who signed Cesc Fabregas.
Yeah, and he was he thought. Well, I mean, it looked as though when the first part of the season he signed, it was all rosy. But Chelsea had been bad for a year, so yes, I think so. Chelsea fans justifiably hurt by seeing a miraculous turn of fortunes. Yeah, we were crap.
But,
I think that's quite charming.
He also says, "But we expect better." And so it isn't this.
He's not complacent. I just think he's honest about Liverpool.
And I think that's quite disarming for any interviewer because it sort of puts.
All my questions were about pressure.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Do you feel pressure? No, absolutely fine, thanks. Do you want some pressure? No. So I think it is very disarming the way that he speaks. He's perpetually positive.
And he saves his political capital quite cleverly. Like with Rodgers, there was that lucky decision, I think, against Bournemouth when Liverpool won earlier this season. And Rodgers came out and said, well, I thought that this decision that all the referees have since said was wrong was right.
Yeah.
And so he kind of You have no he's the boy who cried wolf. You've got no reason to believe him when he actually is telling the truth. Whereas Klopp is kind of more honest, and also
like Mourinho as well. I mean, his excuses they almost sort of it's almost the straw that broke the camel's back, wasn't it? Like he blamed everything, and it was just like
just gets us up and up.
Wears his heart on his sleeve. His heart on his sleeve, isn't he, Klopp? And that's the interesting side, is that actually maybe we're not so used to it. It's almost not so British that he sort of comes out and goes and says these things.
But he's having problems with his tactics, though, isn't he? Because you've got
some people saying he's naive.
You've got Benteke, who's coming on as a late substitute in a losing battle, and a player who was obviously a marquee signing before Klopp's arrival. And his use of forwards like Firmino and things like that is sort of slightly stalling.
I mean, Firmino has had good and bad games. Some people say it is quite naive to play Firmino against a Watford side, but then some people would say it's naive to play Skirt on a Saka at the back against a Watford side. But then he'd say, what were my options?
And Watford are class though as well.
I love it.
Great. Any ball that goes forward, just will Gaal deal with it? Will Deeney deal with it?
Yeah.
Well, Capu's been incredible. I mean, like he breaks up attacks, and he and he the transition from defence to attack is incredibly quick, and it's almost entirely down to him. He's been excellent. But Liverpool, I think we understand now that pressing systems take a while to implement. Pochettino last season Spurs didn't look very good. This season they look like an entirely different team. So who knows? Maybe a couple of additions will really make the difference there for Liverpool.
I think they do need a couple.
Benteke is part of the future there. Or do you think? Because it's very, very. I mean, he's obviously the major casualty of the new tactical system, isn't he? At the moment.
I don't know if it's casualty. I think
Origi was on the bench as well.
Origi came on first, and Benteke came on after him. Essentially, when the Origi tactic.
That's a cuss.
Well, no, I don't know. I mean, it might be perceived that way, right? Yeah. But I think Klopp also spoke very positively post-match about Benteke. Sort of said, we've got time to work on what we want from him. Yeah. So he's positive about everyone. And he was positive about Origi when Origi was, the bane of most Liverpool fans' lives. And he was sort of like, well, I look forward to working with him. And everyone was sort of like, oh, right, yeah. It's sort of like when you go, when people are like, yeah, and I hate him, and this is shit, and this is shit, and someone goes, I don't think it's actually that bad. And everyone sort of goes, yeah, no, you're right, yeah.
I mean, but Watford, though, we were saying, I mean, they're having their best run since the Graham Taylor years, aren't they?
Since before I was born.
No, really?
Yeah.
Oh, it's not what you told us anyway. It doesn't matter.
I'm from Nigeria.
Since Graham Taylor's era in the late 80s, I think things have been quite so good.
Take your word for it,
yeah. Grandad.
22. Yeah. 2 or 3 years old.
Don't give it away.
Old man Partridge. It's fantastic to watch. I mean, you were saying earlier that they do benefit from an alternative financial model with their Italian connections, and they're very much from Udinese. Not necessarily wrongly or right.
And they've kind of had
I don't know if it's wrong or right, though, is it? It's just it's different, and that's the problem with the Premier League.
But the thing is, if you have major multi-billionaires taking over clubs, you have to be resourceful. You have to look at alternative financial models so you can so you can compete. I mean, it's as simple as that. I mean, you're not going to compete on your own. You can compete and buy great players now with Premier League TV money. Hey, Leicester may go on and win the league for all we know. But I mean, teams like Watford have to look at alternative financial models and say how can we? You were saying earlier, do you know what I mean? Not take huge risks on loaning in players.
Well, they've been able to kind of have a Barbo on loan, kind of at no risk. It looks like they're going to get Iturbe in from Roma, but.
That is a risk, though. I mean,
Iturbe... That is a risk.
Most journalists would say he's been good for a couple of seasons, but not good for a couple of seasons. So,
but he'll have resale value, and it's like, and if they loan him, they can kind of see what they're getting to an extent.
In a way, yeah. But shop window, isn't it?
Yeah, and then on the other hand, they kind of said, well, we're going to take this undervalued asset out of Spurs with Capu.
Yeah.
And you see Leicester doing this as well. Leicester have a very good combination of scouting and analytics, and they've picked up N'Golo Kante, who's having a phenomenal season, and Mahrez before that. So these teams have to kind of adopt these clever approaches, but then you see these guys being touted around for 20, 30 million a couple of seasons on. Look at Diafra Sakho.
So the time's come for you to leave.
Yeah.
Yeah? Off you go.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot for...
That's all right.
It's been good to have you on the channel. Thank you.
Very much.
Thank you.
No problem.
Really good. And it was fantastic in the time. It was all those top 10s. It was worth it, some people say. And of course, Patrick, too.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, first time on the show. It's good to have you.
Thanks for having me. Yeah. Well, you laid the groundwork for future Patricks, and I'll try and do the same.
Yeah. That was a good Patrick, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks a lot for joining us on Football Daily Weekly. It's been lovely to have you guys, and we'll see you again real soon, right here.